Communication, Spandau Ballet, and anybody would think we'd moved into a new studio in a different setup at a different time, wouldn't we? But, it's just part of live radio. However you're listening, you'll know it's not recorded, otherwise we'd have taken those last bits out, I think, wouldn't it? For fear of embarrassment.
Wind it back quickly,
pretending we didn't have to play Communication by Spandau Ballet. Pete Francis of MATL's kindly come in at short notice to talk about himself and his business. Afternoon, Pete.
Good afternoon, Steve. I'm pleased you actually thought I might be able to add something useful to the conversation.
I did, and I knew you were a calming influence when things would not go exactly slick, although if you listened to my show before, it's never been slick in the first place. So I haven't got a very high bar to beat, I don't think. Talking about business, you've been in before and contributed to one or two shows, but for those who either didn't listen to it before or maybe they've forgotten in this business world, tell us about you personally, first of all.
Well, it's probably, if people have actually listened before and understood what I've been saying at the time, things keep changing.
They do.
And the same thing, it always happens with small businesses. You keep constantly polishing and identifying ways that you're going to head forward. So, no, we actually are engineering consultants, and we look after small and micro manufacturing businesses. Try and get the directors to have their weekends back.
That's always a nice thing.
It's something they always wish they'd like to have, but never seem to achieve.
But hang on, when I talked to you before, outside of work, you quite often don't have your weekends back because you volunteer for all sorts of things, don't you? Tell us about home life.
Well, home life, the volunteering side has gone a little bit quieter recently.
Well, that's good from what we're saying.
It's certainly good from regards to not having enough time during the week to be able to do the volunteering, so the weekends have quietened down. But very much into, well, I think you probably remember the home brew.
Yes.
Not in the beer, but in the wine.
You do. You got into that, didn't you? How long have you been doing that then? Because there's no bribery and corruption on this radio station at all. But Pete has, as a thank you for some of the stuff I've done with him, is he has bought the odd bottle of wine round and it's not just a sort of washed out bottle with a cork in it. You've got an own label and everything, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, we call it a known brand, but actually it's not one that anyone's registered just yet.
No.
But it does fool the friends to think it's something quite good quality. Although
it is indeed. Yeah.
I might actually be a little bit biased, thinking
no, but it is because you probably get that. Somebody like me and the head of the Ministry of the Interior, when you gave us some bottles, we smile nicely, and half of us is thinking, God, I hope this is all right, because the impression of these kind of things is, and my late dad, going back all those years ago, was when people used to go and buy a bit of a kit from a market stall and put it in the airing cupboard, and sometimes you'd hear loud explosions. And then the wine came out, and a bit like that. Then you didn't like to upset the dad or the relative at the time, and you'd say, "This is nice," and it wasn't. But without being too, over the top compliments, because I'm not very good at them, yours is really nice. How did you get into it?
Well, again, it was my dad was quite.
Oh, so that was a link with you. I didn't know that.
He definitely had a fondness to making wine from all sorts of things like rose petals and pea pod, if people remember that sort of thing.
Yeah. And you mean after you'd taken the peas out, which you got given to do?
Yes.
You got given to do when you were a kid, just to contribute for the tea, didn't you?
Don't waste anything.
No.
But it was variable quality, and we sort of grin and bore it a little bit.
Well, you smiled through gritted teeth like we did you?
Yeah, but it cleaned the drains really well. But when I inherited all his kit and I sort of built up on it, I started to think, with my engineering hat on, how can I make this better? And it was about using the process. And I know that's a little bit of a plug, but I wanted something that was usable. And I started making wine from scratch, and we grow our own grapes.
Right.
One vine. I mean, one step at a time. But actually, as I've sort of used more and more over the years, it's actually got really nice. This year, surprisingly, despite the fact we haven't had a lot of water, I would liken it to having a hint of cherry.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure I'm going to give any away.
No, you're going to you and the wife, Kath, isn't it? We must mention her as well, Henry, because she's been very nice to me if I've done it. But you're right. The winemaking, you don't think you can do, particularly they're doing the vine bit, but as you know, we've had on this show Halfpenny Green Vineyard, and according to social media, they're having a really good harvest as well. I know a few people who volunteered to do the grape picking down there, and so that's one of those things. It's fine doing it like you're doing it as a business. You're so beholden on the weather conditions and things as well, aren't you?
You are, and we've obviously had droughts this year, difficulty getting water into the products.
Yeah,
and that was something that we were recycling water constantly to try and get them to swell, and we had a very early harvest.
But that's kind of a good housekeeping habit these days, isn't it? Because we're told to redo everything as much as we can.
It's very embarrassing when you're having to run the cold water off the shower and you're then using it for something else.
Yeah, I'm surprised with the bit of growing that's on our patio, and we are going to talk business soon, honestly. That's on our patio. I'm surprised it wasn't coming out tasting of all sorts of things, because after we'd done the washing up liquid would go into it, and I'm surprised your mouth doesn't froth when you eat the potatoes because the sun's coming around it really. Do you then actually crush your grapes, or do you take it to somebody to do that? Because the company we mentioned before, and I don't want to make it a huge advert, they're a lovely company and a lovely people. You're down there at certain times, and people turn up with their trailers or a bootload, and then they process it for them.
Yeah, I actually do crush it myself. I want to retain everything and just see how it works. I'm just fascinated by the whole process. And
yeah.
Can I tweak it here and there? Can I make small improvements?
Yeah.
And I don't have to please anyone because it's not commercial.
No, that's true. You've got no standards that you have to hit all things in terms of.
No, that's right. And with people like Halfpenny Green. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Slight mention.
They're a great local company. So
they have to be conscious of the quality and make sure it's consistent.
Yeah. So how many bottles are you expecting this year?
I've got 4 gallons, which are now maturing.
Right.
So that will be about 24 bottles.
Crikey.
And they're all mine.
And they're all yours. And if it gets up to 75 and you're getting a bit drunk, you'll pass them out. And so yeah, I can see that. And with your business hat on, it's that part of your brain thinking, how can I make it better? How can I make it look better?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of work, but it's kind of not work at the same time, isn't it?
Absolutely. I've got quite a lot of bits and pieces. Yeah, I've got the tools and I've got equipment, but I don't necessarily want to buy loads of equipment. And so I make best use of what I can that I've got in the cupboard. And there are ways of making those improvements that ultimately I think I'm going to have to invest in 1 or 2 things.
Right. So small scale, move it in, and do some things like that would be a good way of doing it, wouldn't it?
It's a mantra.
I tell you what, I've just thought of a wine tune. Do you mind if we play that?
I think so.
I think we should. I think this will probably work. One of the great things about these shows is that I can just put in tunes whenever I feel like it on that, because we never know how long the conversations are going to go for, and you won't either. So hope you enjoyed that. We thought we'd talk about business, but we've only been talking about Pete's winemaking so far. But I will give you updates, because if you have an excessive harvest, Pete, or anything like
hopeful.
that.
Yes.
No, it's definitely not hint as a bottle for the listeners or anything like that, because we couldn't possibly. This could be good news with that, and with that. So you think, finally on that, are you thinking of adding another vine? Are you attempting to make it a bigger thing by going and buying another one? Because you can do that fairly easily.
We are thinking about putting another vine in, because this one has done really well since it's in its
inspired you.
But trouble is they take a while to establish, and
yeah, it's a few years, isn't it?
It is, and whether I want to take even more space away from Kath, where she it's in her vegetable patch.
That'd be a negotiation.
It would have to be a strong negotiation, yes.
Yeah. So you've run your own company, MATL. When did you start it? Why did you start it?
Well, it's actually started in 1993.
Crikey.
So that does make me rather elderly, doesn't it?
Yeah, but you'll never be as old as me. That's the thing.
Note I didn't say anything there.
No, thanks for that. So 1993, yeah.
Yeah, and that was really just a convenience with doing some contracting work for other companies, going in, effectively replacing their employees with temporary work.
Oh, okay.
But in those days, we didn't have things like IR35 to worry about, and there were people who'd been in one position on a contract basis for up to 15 years.
Crikey.
And in fact, even my time at the first contract was, I think, 6 years, which is well,
Yeah.
heard of now, is it?
So was that what got you into manufacturing and looking at manufacturing?
I was always involved with manufacturing in some respects from the automation side.
Right.
I started off life doing building automation and control systems,
Crikey.
control panels, programming PLCs, and we worked a lot with companies that were in production of packaging, food, pharmaceuticals, chemicals,
Right.
all sorts of things. So that's actually really where my excitement about processes comes in, because I like to see how things transform and move and change, and you heat them up and the various things that could go bang if you really want them to.
Yeah, but experimentally going bang is better than going bang when they're out in the public markets, really.
I also think experimentally by accident rather than planning to get that happen.
Yeah. So that constantly going brain thing, because unless I missed it, the sort of production efficiency and the constant innovation bit is a fascinating part of business. But I seem to have only caught onto it in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years. Was it around in that time, or was it called that in those times? Just trying to make your product or your packaging better, faster, cheaper.
I think that there's always been a bit of a drive to try and improve what you're putting out. So the efficiency drive, getting employees to actually manufacture faster, replacing them with machinery, and that's actually one of the things I really got quite upset about, is that the idea that what I was doing was effectively making people redundant.
Yeah,
and I didn't like that side of it, but that has now shifted, and it is much more about how can you save waste, reduce the costs, improve the efficiency without actually affecting people's lives in a negative way.
Driven both by a competitiveness agenda, so that you can sell more and market more, but also the drive for being greener and more environmentally friendly.
Yeah, and there's been a bit of a swing in the last decade or so. We've had a period where there's been a lot of drive towards the standard big factory efficiency drives, building in frameworks, lean, and Six Sigma.
Kaizen and all sorts of names came out for years, didn't they?
There's lots of terminology that's around, and in the businesses I work with, that sort of terminology scares them off.
Yeah.
And the idea of efficiency is attractive, but the idea of putting in a system that is then going to take them away from what they understand is a scary route for a lot of small businesses to follow.
Because I suppose the psychology is that they can see the cost of the materials and they can see the cost of labour, but processing that in a way that they don't completely understand or comprehend, or they think it might not work out, is just adds to the risk and the fear factor, isn't it?
It does, and that loss of control does worry people. If you are supposed to be running a business and being in control of the finances and the operation and the production, then losing control to a third party, even if that third party is sitting on your own computers, that is something that a lot of people aren't prepared to take that step.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't apply the principles. It's just you don't need to wholeheartedly embrace it.
You don't need to buy a whole Kaizen package or whatever to use that expression.
No, you can take the bits that suit you.
Yeah.
And to be fairness to the consultants who actually do promote large scale, they'll probably agree and say, it's all common sense. You don't need to adopt every part of the package.
Right. But is some of the people that do this, and we'll hear your differences in a minute, some of those is a bit like buying something for your computer where you don't fully understand it, and if you're not careful, you only need a certain part of it, and it can change the whole feel and think of your company in the wrong way.
It could, and there's also things that you bring in they've got hidden talents, they've got hidden facilities that you just never get to use.
Right.
I mean, if you take an example, for instance, a lot of people, the majority of people are actually familiar with Microsoft Excel.
Yeah.
But there's a vast array of...
We don't use most of the stuff, do we?
We just use it effectively as a slightly glorified calculator.
Yeah.
And most people are quite happy with that. But there's so many things that are hidden behind there that can be unlocked if there's a need.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be an expert. You just need to unlock those individual parts.
And the other thing I understand you're helping with too, which kind of plays on some psychology you said before. With the ones you're looking at, there's a need to both bring younger people into manufacturing and also retain those who've been in it for years. So you're trying to help companies where they keep Bert age, who's just looking forward to his retirement and feels imminently threatened by any changes as well, because the manufacturing balance that's happening at the moment is exactly that. You want to keep the people who've got all that years of knowledge and more things than most people forget, and still bring in some excitement and some new innovation with younger people.
Oh yeah, and the people who have got loads of experience genuinely really want to share that knowledge and experience with younger people if they could get the opportunity. But unfortunately, there's a bit of a disconnect where young people have got a lot of experience and abilities in technology. Older people have got the practical experience that is part of the manufacturing process. Then the opportunity to bring those two together in a way that both feel they're contributing to it is a real challenge, especially when you're dealing with a small business where they don't have necessarily the time to mentor each other. And I do say it's mentoring each other, because the younger person actually has an opportunity to mentor an older person without it feeling as if it's a challenge.
The old threat and the insecurity bit, yeah.
Yeah, quite often Bill, as you say, he's in his early 60s thinking about retiring, never got to grips with computers because he doesn't need them.
No.
But actually having a young person who can see how that can be used in the workplace, Bill's getting that education as well, and he might feel quite good about himself that he's managed to crack one of those challenges that he couldn't sort out at home.
That's why as we're suggesting, and we'll talk about it in a second again, that there's a lot for having looking at a company from the outside and making what's right fit for them, rather than just say, but if you buy this package, it'll solve all your problems. And we've all done too much of that with our IT and other stuff, haven't we? We bought things and you buy everything off a satellite, TV channel or something, and you find that you only use about 10 of the 600 program channels on it or something.
Well, as you're probably familiar, Steve, a lot of the marketing coaching will tell you that people buy on emotion.
Yeah,
and we do that as a matter of course in daily life, retail. You like the look of something, so you buy it. You don't necessarily need that one, but it's just you like it.
Yeah,
so you've got that connection.
And let's face it, if it makes you feel good, and if we're making manufacturers feel good and better, and the whole aim is to get them into more markets and to increase their profits so that they can be part of the thing. Because we're talking also again later this afternoon about apprenticeships and people changing careers to get back into manufacturing, and to make it a really exciting thing to be in, which you and I know it is, because every time we go to a factory, I see it through my sort of views, and you see it of, blimey, I could improve that, or I could change that, or why are you still doing that?
One of the things I find really exciting, and that's where the great thing about working with young people has been, the volunteering, is they've never actually had the experience of what's in a workplace and in manufacturing. So it's a bit of a dark art to them. But being able to relate to things that they actually see in the shops or in real life in their hands, and seeing how that gets made or how it gets used is quite often a real eye opener to them. And their ability to use that to then solve their own problems is something that isn't taught in schools. I don't know whether it could be taught in schools, because there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be transferred as opposed to being able to build the skills. But it's using the skills is what they need at the end of their education, their formal education.
Yeah, talking of which, I think we're allowed to talk about it slightly anyway. You do stuff with Birmingham University to show some practical expertise in what you do.
It's Aston University.
Aston University.
Yeah, yes.
I knew it was somewhere over there, somewhere down south.
Yeah. And actually, that's one of the things they recognise. This is a training course for process engineers,
right?
And then process engineers who are either new to the industry or they've got a bit of an overview job, such as health and safety or risk assessment. They just need to know enough.
Right.
What the guys at Aston Ebbury recognised was that people who were graduated were then thrust into a role that was quite responsible, quite senior, and they were expected to know everything. And
it was a completely different environment.
And they didn't even have access to people who knew enough about the processes and the products and the systems that they were working with.
Blimey, that'd be scary, wouldn't it?
It is a scary business to be in, because you are the one who's actually signing off on things. So what Ebbury have done is set up effectively a 4-day CPD course, and it introduces people to the basics.
CPD is continual professional development, is it?
Continual professional development.
That's okay.
And it's in my view, it's actually short-circuiting some of the sort of in factory time that you would be spent just wandering around and getting an understanding of what's happening. It's the opportunity to be stupid.
Yeah, and it's getting a faster return on the investment for people that take them on.
And from the feedback we've had, the students have found it absolutely fantastic. That it's given them so much confidence that they now know the sort of questions to ask. They don't know everything, but they at least know who to ask and what to ask.
Because whenever you move into somewhere new, people are always thinking, "Oh, I wonder what they know." I bet they do. Oh, how are they supposed to know what we do? You and I get it when we go into companies where they think, "What can you show? What can you tell me that I don't know?" Yeah. And so it's hard enough for older, wiser, more experienced people like you and me. But if you've come out of college or university and you're going in, you'll feel as though you're under scrutiny for a while, won't you? So that if you can help them get that credibility right at the start, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and giving them the confidence to actually open their mouths and ask is a big step, because at least they feel that they're contributing, but also demonstrating that they're willing to join in. And I think that's really helped.
Brilliant. Right, we'll play another tune, we'll catch our breath, and we'll have more conversations with Pete straight after this. Drops of Jupiter tell me it's Steve Parker with you on Black Country Extra and Black Country Radio with our business and music show. So I told you we played a few tunes along with them. Some of them have lots to do with the conversation, and to be honest, some of them it's just because I like them. And what the heck, we're doing this because we want to, and we should play some great tunes as you'll hear throughout the show. And we're gathering a list of ones to go with conversations like you'll hear throughout the show as well. Pete Francis of MATL is with me. We've been talking about manufacturing as well, haven't we? I guess when you go and talk to people, you tend to think of a lot of this help only being applicable to companies of a certain size, and we both know there's loads of companies that have been around for years who don't think they can get help or are a bit reluctant to get help, and you can go in. They'll probably feel less threatened by you going in, don't they? With a bit of experience and sage.
It does depend. I mean, a lot of the help that's been made available over the last few years to businesses is probably mistakenly thought to be for startups or companies that are going into the next stage. Those companies which are well-established, traditional companies that possibly they've been going on for 30, 40 years, they quite often either feel there's something not quite right, or they'd like to do something, or that there isn't anything for them, and there's not likely to be any help because they're not startups, they're existing ones. Yeah,
they kind of fall through. Nobody's interested in my older company.
Yeah, but the feeling I think is that it's very difficult for anyone to define exactly what their problems are if they've got a problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes, as far as they're concerned, there is absolutely nothing wrong. They are doing exactly what they want to be doing. They're continuing to do it exactly the same for the last 15 years, and that's the way they're going to.
Or I guess they're doing absolutely everything they can to make it run as fast as well as they can. Because they haven't got the outside perspective of it.
Having the outside perspective does mean that you can bring in views from other industries. Most business owners are sort of used to sort of working in their company, and they're very, very focused. They're not necessarily looking to network and sort of have discussions with people outside. So they know their own business exceedingly well. What they don't get to see is what technologies have changed, what ideas, what different processes have arisen from other areas that might be applicable. And sometimes, because it's not doesn't necessarily relate to their particular process or their particular piece of equipment, they will discount it because it's not relevant. But actually, having an outside view, and sometimes a completely wacky view, as we sometimes have, we will ask.
There's no such thing as a bad idea, really, or an embarrassing idea, is there?
No, not at all. It makes them think about, can that actually help me too? That's what we are looking for, is to try and help solve or make things better, and maybe using ideas from other industries, adapt them, and put them in place into that particular company.
And as we'll say again afterwards, we'll have a few minutes discussion about it in a while. Giving instead of people working all the hours they have to, and then catching up with stuff on Saturdays and Sundays, helping them by doing those improvements, helping them get some of their family time back and things like that, which is as we all know, it made us think of that, particularly during the C word crisis, how much we valued those close to us, and how much we needed to enjoy them as much as we could for as long as we could. You mentioned another word in your last few sentences, including the networking bit, and manufacturers have traditionally not been great at getting together and bouncing ideas off each other, and you set up and you continue to be setting up a sort of community that meets currently online, I think, every Thursday, isn't it? Tell us about that.
We do. Yes, you're absolutely right. What we found, and I think a lot of people have found, is that manufacturing companies, they don't take part in networking groups. They don't have discussions openly with a load of other people. They're very keen on they like their own company, which is great. There's no problem with that. But there's the idea of sharing problems might be a little bit anathema to them, but it does help. Other people are there to actually advise them and say, "Oh, yeah, we've done that as well," or we tried that, but it didn't work, but it might work for you. So yes, what we've done is we've provided a nice, easy to access. We call it a workshop because we don't want to have a networking club where everyone's coming just to sell themselves. So we run what's called a manufacturing support workshop every Thursday lunchtime, and we don't want to charge for it. We want manufacturers to actually come along. If they've got a problem, talk about the problem. If they just want to find out what's going on in other people's lives, that's fine as well. But it's there as a sort of like, go down the pub at lunchtime, and I'll bring the biscuits.
And you can, with all of these conversations, you can learn a lot from somebody else's issue as well, can't you? Because we say this a lot on these shows. When you're running your own company, it can be personal. It can hit you more often than others, and it can hurt. And sometimes it's very easy to think, "Oh, this is only happening to me," and then you go to one of those workshops and think, "Hang on a minute." It's happened to him. Oh yeah. This must be happening regularly. So let's find the best way of sorting it.
The number of times that someone else has already been has solved a problem, or found an issue, or found an alternative supplier, or taken a different route, and we share it with everyone else on the platform, and say, "Oh yeah, I'll have a go at that."
Yeah.
That's great, and the that's why people do come back in. They like the idea that they're getting advice, but it's not advice that they're having to work for, or there's no strings attached. But it's actually just friendly advice from like-minded people who want to help.
Yeah, in amongst people who are doing the same things themselves and going through it, and wondering whether they're right to feel particularly excited or particularly bad about something that has happened that day.
Yeah, and there are things that we can, between us, we can actually head other people off on. Say, oh, yeah, we've heard about this and we've seen it, and this is how it actually worked in practice.
Well,
so
that was more trouble than it was worth, and it took so much. Yeah,
but it's a cautionary thing rather than saying don't do it.
Yeah,
everyone is still running their own business, and they have to look after their own interests. But it just provides a little bit of real world information back in, so it helps their decisions.
Which again breaks that barrier down with accepting new stuff or wanting to think about new stuff.
Yep.
If you trust the person who you've been in the group with however many times over whatever period on a Thursday lunchtime, you can then you then think, well, if they're recommending it, and they're pretty rubbish on IT like I am, then it must be okay to use it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and
I think there's a lot of that, as well as the peer bit.
And we're getting some nice some cross relationships establishing between the people who come to the group. They say, oh, we like how those people talk about things, or they're not necessarily there as a supplier or a client, but actually they can start building collaborations, and that working together is great.
Yeah, and we've had one or two of them on this show as well, including just because he's in my head, Russell Line, and who's on, and he's trying to run a company that does paint, spray coating of paints and paint development, as well as one that's doing something else and then something else as well, and his head's full of that. And I know he came on sometimes, and he's part of the people that meet on a Thursday, just because he wants to unpickle his brain, or he wants to get some sense of normality in amongst his mad world.
I'm sure Mr. Ryan is actually, in a former life, used to be a circus juggler, because he's always got many balls in the air.
Yeah, and then to us from the outside, we sometimes look at what he does, don't we, and we think, why have you taken on that? Haven't you got 3 million things to sort out in the meantime? But
he obviously sees something that is good and worth following up on.
Yeah, and he gets excited by an opportunity and just throws himself into it. It's So while we're allowed to, how do people find that workshop that you're talking about? Is it best to contact you and try and get them for you to do the details?
We have. If people go to we have a specific website for manufacturing.support. That's
right.
it. Just no .com or co.uk or anything like that. It's just manufacturing.support, and you can book online through there. You can actually book through our matl.co.uk website. And it's every Thursday at 12:09 for
12:09, 51 minutes.
51 minutes, yes.
And you it's not one of these where you get told off if you don't turn up every week.
No.
You don't have to send a substitute if you don't. Any of that kind of thing.
No obligation. There's no fee. It's only 51 minutes because we know that we've worked out, and this is where the engineering geek
came in.
Yeah, it takes 9 minutes to be able to turn the kettle on and go to the toilet.
Wow.
So if you've got a meeting beforehand, you're still going to be able to make hours.
I was going to say, when you're on radio, you can do it in much less than that. But that's another time. Right, we're going to play another tune, and then Pete will be staying with us for the second hour. Gareth Jones of Incom is going to be with us. So we'll do an overlap with all sorts of things. Stay with us. If you were thinking that all of the tunes are to go along with the guests, some of them, I tell you, are just self-indulgent, and I heard that earlier in the week. And I was driving, and I couldn't do the full air drums bit on that bit, which is kind of essential if you're at any age at all, really, isn't it, to do that? But we were allowed to do it in the studio, weren't we? We used to sort of tap on the old, because it was safe and legal to do so.
We were, Steve, and I used to play that one in my band.
Oh, hang on a minute. This is more information we didn't know before.
I can't say I was singing. I was sort of howling a little bit, and the drums were played by Roland.
Roland the drummer.
Roland,
Good name for a drummer.
The drum machine, yes.
When was that then?
Oh, it's going back a few years.
I know, but that's okay.
We called it Mad Runner. No idea why.
Mad Runner. What sort of music did you play then?
We were all covers of various bands that we just like to listen to. So we just hijacked it and played at the local pub in return for a few beers.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a fair swap, isn't it? Sorry, something just came up on my screen. Like you get pop-ups when you don't need them. You don't need them if you're doing live radio, folks. So you're going to stay with us. So you're working with any company that wants to improve their processes, and you've got a very inquisitive head. So you just want to always find ways of making things easier and better for people. Is that
the worrying thing for them? Is I walk in there and I'm already starting to think, that could be better. Yeah. We can improve that.
So nail things around and tidy them away before Pete goes. Otherwise, he'll have you sorted in no time at all. And what sort of companies you're working with? All sorts of companies at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah. Generally manufacturing businesses, smaller micro. They're the ones that probably need the most help at the moment.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have the in-house resources to make significant changes. And the focus is really on making the best of the equipment and people that they have already in-house before they actually have to start committing to buying something in from outside.
Okay, brilliant. And we'll get you to repeat your details afterwards. But we're going to talk to Gareth Jones of Incom in a second. But how do people find your site and find you on social media and all this stuff we're supposed to do nowadays?
Okay, well the website is matl.co.uk. That's Mike Alpha Tango Lima.co.uk. Nice and easy.
Sounded like I was being arrested there for a minute.
Yeah, you can get us on Twitter, which is at Matt Limited.
Okay.
Limited is spelt out as the word limited, and I have no idea. We're on Facebook somewhere, but I cannot remember what that one's called.
No, anyway, so or just Pete Francis on LinkedIn as well.
Yep, absolutely.
And if you can't, if you fail all of that, just go onto my LinkedIn profile, and you'll see that Pete's one of my contacts, and you'll see that we both comment on certain things. Brilliant. Pete's going to be asking some questions and getting involved with the conversation with Gareth Jones in a minute. So we'll play another tune, get him all set up. He's doing his warm-up exercises as we speak in the studio.